Remember this? London 2012, and finally the sense that Paralympic athletes were getting the kind of recognition that often seemed to have been reserved for their Olympic colleagues. And yet today, with just 19 days to go to their opening ceremony in Rio, the devastating news that their games are to be downgraded.
Never before in the 56-year history of the Paralympic Games have we faced circumstances like this.
Also on News at 10 tonight. Calls for a ceasefire in Aleppo grow as more injured children flood the hospitals. The most unlikely news story of the year, Donald Trump actually says sorry. The rebirth of Rati as they face wipeout in their natural habitat. The National Trust releases voles back into the wild. And he is on the cusp of an unprecedented triple-treble goal. But how can Usain Bolt run so fast? We take a look at the physiology and the science.
This is ITV News at 10 with Tom Bradby.
Good evening. Before the London Olympics, there was a really awkward question that we all occasionally had to face. Why did the Paralympics get so much less attention than the Olympics themselves? Well, London changed all that. It wasn't just that the races seemed as exciting and the winners as amazing, but sometimes much more so because of what they'd had to overcome. So it is all the more extraordinary that with just 19 days to go to the opening of the Paralympic Games in Rio, the authorities announced today that they were to be massively scaled back because of huge financial problems. Ticket sales are running at just 12%. Some teams may not even turn up. Organisers say it's the worst setback in the Games' 56-year history.
London 2012, the magical moment the Paralympics came of age. And for many, matched for drama and spectacle, the Olympic Games that had gone just before. 4 years on, and Rio is not ready to party. The money's run out.
Never before in the 56-year history of the Paralympic Games have we faced circumstances like this. Clearly, Brazil is in a far different position now to the one that it was in October 2009, when it won the right to stage both games.
Empty seats and silent stadia speak volumes of Rio's financial failure. Barely more than 10% have been sold for the Paralympics. Embarrassing, says one insider. While no sports will be cut, the savings will have a serious impact. There'll be reductions in the Paralympic workforce, and some transport links will be axed. There'll be media centres closed, and worst, one of Rio's sporting complexes, Deodoro, shut completely. The closure of this complex is the most dramatic illustration of the crisis that has afflicted Rio 2016. Even with Olympic attractions like hockey and shooting, sometimes it's felt like the soldiers outnumber the supporters. So it'll be dismantled and the Paralympians transferred to other venues. Britain will send a full team, and money has been found to help other athletes travel. Still, it's feared up to 10 nations might not make it.
It does feel that they're being treated like second-class citizens. I don't think that's what Rio intended, because they've got great swimming and athletic teams, lots of media coverage. They're a country that get Paralympic sport, but I think the pressure of getting the Olympics right has just meant they're sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul, and the upshot of that is what we're seeing now.
On British TV screens, the Games are being heavily promoted.
Yes, I can.
But in Brazil, the marketing won't start until the Olympics end. According to one hero of London 2012, it's hardly the perfect preparation for competitors.
They've probably trained, for 4 years, for this 1 or 2 weeks of their life. However, that's their role, that's their job. So hopefully, the IPC can work with, the Rio Paralympic Committee and get this funding, in place, in readiness.
The Games start in just 19 days' time. Brazil might not be able to keep the promises it made, but the action should be as compelling as ever. John Ray, News at 10, Rio.
So how has it come to this? Well, the warning signs had been there for some time, with hundreds of empty seats clearly visible at the current Olympic event. But ticket sales for the Paralympics have been far, far worse. 290,000 sold to date, which is just 12% of the total available. Compare that to London, where 2.1 million tickets were sold. The ticket prices themselves don't appear to be the issue. Tonight, we found wheelchair fencing tickets on their website for just £4.60. But add poor ticket sales to the fact that the original Paralympics budget has already been cut twice, as organisers dipped into it to pay for the spiralling costs of the Olympics themselves, and the financial shortfall does become clear. Well, let's go back to John Ray in Rio. John, let's just deal with the financial crisis itself first. Is this about poor ticket sales, or is it more complicated than that?
It's very complicated, Tom. Look, there's been a week of intense crisis talk behind the scenes here. A couple of days ago, I talked to one fellow with a ringside seat at it all, and I said, look, how bad is the cash crisis? And he said, in one word, he said it's absolutely calamitous. But the problem, oddly, hasn't been the ticket sales, mostly. The reason for that is that it's very cheap to go and see the Paralympics. £3 might get you into some of the events, so the financial foundations of the Games does not rest on ticket sales. The real issue has been Rio 2016 organisers shifting money from the Paralympic budget into what inevitably, rightly or wrongly, they certainly wouldn't say publicly, but they see as the main event at the Olympics. The result has been this terrible shortfall. I'm told it's about £10 million.
Well, John, the fact that the Paralympics are going to pay the price for this is obviously desperately disappointing for many. Is there, in your view, anything that can be done about it at this point?
It would seem, I think, politically very difficult, perhaps impossible for the Brazilian government to put more public subsidy into the Games. Remember, this country is cash-strapped. Public services are crumbling. I don't think there's more public money. If there is a hope for the Paralympics, I think it is a quaint old-fashioned thought, Tom. It relies on the sporting glory. The Brazilian Olympic team hasn't been that great, but their Paralympic team is hot stuff. They finished 7th in London 2012. If they can repeat that kind of success, then yes, I think we will see a buzz about Rio again.
OK, John, let's hope so. Thank you very much indeed. Now, the news about the Paralympics inevitably cast a shadow over tonight's event, but it didn't stop Team GB's Nick Skelton winning gold on Big Star in the individual show jumping event, as he became the oldest Briton for 100 years to win gold. Before that, high-kicking Jade Jones in Taekwondo was celebrating joining a select band of British athletes who've not only won gold in Rio, but also successfully defended their titles from London 2012. And tonight, Usain Bolt is on the brink of even greater glory, if that's possible, going for the triple treble, something never achieved before. 3 golds from 3 consecutive Olympic Games.
It's not often in sport you peak at 58, but that's just what Nick Skelton did today. Incredibly, his 7th Games and the oldest British Olympic champion since 1908. Skelton's clear round on Big Star in a 6-way jump-off, giving him his first individual medal since beginning his Olympic odyssey in Seoul 28 years ago. No, not more from Britain's record-breaking gymnastics team, but an energetic celebration from super heavyweight Joe Joyce. Around down, Joyce pummeled his tiring opponent from Kazakhstan in the final 2, making the decision very easy for the judges. The final is Sunday, and he's guaranteed Team GB another silver at least.
Another gold medal.
She may only be a touch over 5 foot, but Jade Jones already lives in the land of the giants, home to an elite club of British double Olympic champions.
Absolutely magnificent performance.
She more than lived up to her nickname, the Headhunter, by high-kicking her way to the defence of her title, making history for a second time at the age of just 23.
I don't think people realise, how hard it is, training every day, 6 hours a day, for 4 years, and mentally and physically, it's just so draining. So, it's all down to this one day. It's so nerve-wracking, but such a buzz at the same time. And when it pays off, it's just amazing.
One more spin round the bend.
There's only one man millions of people schedule their day around just to watch him at work. They did it last night and they'll be doing it again later when Usain Bolt goes for his unprecedented treble. Athletics has much to thank him for. Without him, it would be in a vulnerable place, and after tonight, it may be something it'll have to face up to.
And Steve joins us also from Rio. Steve, the Paralympic row has rather overshadowed things today, but there's still a lot going on there tonight, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a thrilling match actually going on in the hockey final at the moment. Team GB's women have already made history by getting to the final. They're up against the world-ranked #1 team in the gold medal match. The score currently 3-2 to the Dutch, Kitty van Marle getting the latest goal. Team GB have never beaten the Dutch in real time, but when it's ended all square, when there's a shootout, the British normally win, so they'll be hoping for that third goal to equalise. In the taekwondo tonight, there's a chance of gold. There's a minimum of silver for Lutalo Mohammed. He fights in the early hours. And I've mentioned Usain Bolt already, that historic, unprecedented, call it what you like, treble. We also have to remember that Team GB has their own team running in that relay, the 4x100 men. They stand a chance, but I think however they do, they're very unlikely to overshadow Usain Bolt tonight.
OK, Steve, tonight at least. Thank you very much. And this is how the medals table does look tonight, with Team GB still in second place between America and China. But if this is to be Team GB's best ever games, they need to beat the medal tally of 65 from London 2012. And that means they need to win another 9 more medals, with just over 2 more days of competition to go. Now, last night we reported, of course, on the pictures of 5-year-old Omran Daknish, the disorientated boy whose image in the back of an ambulance flashed around the world and quickly came to epitomise the relentless suffering in Syria, and especially inside the besieged city of Aleppo. Tonight, as international calls for a ceasefire grow, with little certainty if they will be heeded, we have further evidence of just how merciless the suffering is for the city's seriously injured children.
They have injuries which would need care in a specialist unit in most countries. But this is how you recuperate when the hospital and your home are on the front line of a merciless battle. Yesterday we featured the children as they were taken into the emergency room among a group who'd just been hit by what we are told was a cluster bomb. This was Faisal. He's 5 and was hit in the face and body. His injuries were so bad we can't show you them in detail. Today, he is on a dirty mattress without professional care because the hospital is full. We now know this is his 7-year-old sister Kamar. She was with her brothers and has a badly damaged hand as well as cuts to her body. This is her other brother, 8-year-old Mohammed. He was operated on just a few hours ago, but now he's been taken home. His family have no medical training and they are having to monitor his head injury alone. The scene in this one room exemplifies what aid agencies and doctors are warning, that 35% of those being injured in Syria's war are children.
We're finding that children have urgent medical needs because of all the aerial bombardment, but we're not able to get them out of Aleppo to get them to the hospitals that they need to get to.
This is where the children were injured. The Russians insist they didn't drop cluster bombs, but this wreckage suggests otherwise. One of the children least injured shows a British aid volunteer where they'd been playing and picks up pieces of twisted metal and tail fin, which munitions experts tell us are from a cluster bomb. The images of little Omran Daknish, so stunned and silent after being caught in a different airstrike, has focused the world's attention on eastern Aleppo once more. International uproar has not grounded the Russian bombers. But whilst Russia continues to insist it only targets so-called Islamic State, it says it will help deliver a 48-hour ceasefire.
They have the power, and just as they have the power to inflict enormous injury on the opposition and those who oppose the Assad regime, so they have the power, if they so wish, to implement and push forward on this ceasefire and to get the regime of Bashar al-Assad to agree.
It appears that Russia is the player now that can exert the greatest influence for good or for ill.
They are the only people now that can do this. This is partly because of their support for the Assad regime, but also I think it reflects the Western diplomatic retreat from any meaningful initiative with regard to bringing peace to Syria.
It's a diplomatic retreat felt hardest by the young. A 48-hour ceasefire is something, but Syria and its children on every side of this conflict need more than brief respite. Emma Murphy, News at 10.
Certainly has been a grim week in Aleppo. It's still to come on News at 10.
I'm here in Michigan at a Republican rally where the Trump train is in trouble, and this is a serious attempt to get it back on track.
And find out why Ratty is making a return to the wet and wild Yorkshire Dales.
Those stories and more in just a few moments. Welcome back. They are the words Donald Trump's critics thought they would never hear. For the first time in his presidential campaign, the Republican nominee has offered an apology to those, let's face it, there are a lot of them, who he may have hurt by his caustic comments. Sometimes, he said in the heat of the debate, you don't quite choose the right words. And, believe it or not, I regret it, he added, particularly where it may have caused personal pain. This is the scene live in Michigan where Mr. Trump has just taken to the stage. It's the first rally since a new team took control of his campaign, tasked with reversing recent trends in polls, which consistently show him trailing behind his Democratic rival Hillary Clinton. But will they, and his newfound contrition, if that's what it is, be enough to change his political fortunes?
It's all change in Team Trump.
Sometimes I can be too honest.
New team, new tone. You can almost hear the brakes screeching.
Sometimes, in the heat of debate and speaking on a multitude of issues, you don't choose the right words or you say the wrong thing. I have done that. And believe it or not, I regret it.
Not quite an apology. But as the man rolled back his rhetoric, so his new team rolled out a rebranded Donald Trump. For the first time, the Republican candidate hit the streets, visiting flood-hit Louisiana to get up close and personal with voters.
In Hillary Clinton's America, the system stays rigged against Americans.
And that wasn't the only change.
Donald Trump's America is secure.
Today also saw Trump's first official TV ad launched in 4 crucial swing states.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
All this rebranding as his high-profile campaign manager, Paul Manafort, resigned. Manafort has himself been caught up in a scandal involving possible support of Russian activities in Ukraine. Ever since his polls peaked during last month's Republican convention and the slump that followed, the Trump campaign has struggled to make up a consistent 7-point deficit to Hillary Clinton. And support has fallen amongst all groups. With white voters thought to be a group he can rely on, he slipped to 41%, narrowly ahead of Clinton. While with Latinos, he's at just 26%. And amongst black Americans, he can only count on 2% of voters.
Nobody respects women more than Donald Trump.
His support amongst women, too, has dropped, a fact that his opponents have exploited in TV ads.
There has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah.
And at this Michigan beauty salon, the newly repackaged, regretful Trump was convincing no one.
Mr. Trump has expressed regret for some of the remarks he's made. Does that impress you, change your mind at all about him?
No. No, it doesn't impress me at all. I'm the first one to say he says a lot of things that are inappropriate. Yeah. Yeah, he needs to stop that. That's not okay.
Do you think his apology is sincere?
No. I think he's saying it right now to save his butt.
His hardcore supporters are waiting to hear him speak here tonight, but it's not them who matter. It's the people who aren't here he must reach if he wants to win this election.
And Penny is at the rally at Michigan tonight. Penny, is there anyone who thinks there was anything genuine in that sense of regret? And what does Mark II Donald Trump, if that's what it is, what's that going to be like, do you think?
Well, I think it would be fair to say that this apology was probably more strategic than it was sincere. Let's say it's a break point, a mark at the beginning of what they are calling here Trump 2.0. So a new beginning. What will we see? What will Trump be like, Trump 2.0? Well, I think at rallies like this, and we've already beginning to see it, more teleprompt and less ad-libbing. And with his new team, more disciplined and targeted campaigning and less sort of tweeting and emotional campaigning. But, you know, you can't take Donald Trump out of the Donald Trump campaign, can you, Tom? And his new advisors have got a dilemma because their greatest asset is also their greatest liability.
Well, Penny, we saw in your report there the polls are not going his way, and that's putting it mildly. Is there any sense in which you think historically he can pull it back from here?
Well, historically, nobody since Harry Truman has won when they've been this far behind at this point in the polls. And just tonight, we're seeing 3 more strategic battleground states looking like they're falling to Hillary. So it has to be unlikely. But look, it was unlikely that he'd win the nomination. He's got a new team, he's got a new strategy, and sounding a bit like Trump, he is never going to give up.
All right, Penny. Thank you very much indeed. 7 weeks ago tonight, Hasnat Karim, a dual British and Bangladeshi citizen, was celebrating his daughter's 13th birthday at a cafe in Dhaka when 5 IS terrorists burst in. By the time the attack was over, 25 people were dead, including all the militants. Karim survived but was arrested 2 weeks ago under suspicion of possibly being an accomplice. He's not been charged but is still being held at an unknown location. His wife insists he's innocent and has tonight appealed for his immediate release.
Hasnat Karim says it was only his love for his daughter that brought him to the cafe that terrorists attacked. And yet he's accused of being a former member of an extremist group and an aide to the gunmen who hacked to death more than 20 hostages. He's told his interrogators in Bangladesh that he went to the cafe for his daughter's birthday party. His wife spoke to ITV News and relived the night.
Really, they were killing the foreigners and they were chopping. We could hear the sound. And it was really very scary. And at that time, I was really worried about my children, because they instructed me to cover their eyes and ears, and I tried, but my daughter, as you know, is 13, she didn't want to close her eyes. Basically, whole night, we 8 hostages sit together, keeping our head down, and it was really very, I was just thinking about my son because he's just 8 years old.
And she says her husband is completely innocent.
No one will take his family with him if he would actually be involved with the gunmen.
Hasnat Karim is a British citizen of Bangladeshi origin, a former engineer and university lecturer, but for 6 weeks police in Dhaka have been investigating whether he's kept a sinister secret.
Why would he bring children to a birthday party if he knew it?
I just told you before that the terrorists can go to any extent to fulfill their mission.
He's being investigated in part because of images like this. It shows him talking to the terrorists during the 10-hour siege.
If you are threatened with your life, especially with your children and wife, you would be trembling, you would be worried. But he doesn't have that. He's so relaxed. You can even see the pictures.
His wife says he was putting on a brave face to try to negotiate.
That's his wife's statement. She has the right to her opinion.
And her opinion is that she's married to the hero of that night, whose attempts to end a standoff have led to the most serious accusations. Rohit Katru, News at 10.
They were the inspiration for Ratty in the children's novel The Wind in the Willows, but are now some of the most elusive and endangered mammals in Britain. The humble water vole has been all but wiped out in many areas of the country, often preyed upon by minks that escaped from fur farms in the 1960s. So today, the National Trust reintroduced about 100 of them to a tarn in the Yorkshire Dales, the first time they've been seen there for 50 years.
They may be one of Britain's most beautiful wild creatures, but the water vole is also our most endangered species. Their population numbers have plummeted. In some parts of the country, they've completely disappeared.
The water vole population has declined by about 90% from the rivers and streams where they were once found, and this is mainly because of mink farms releasing the mink for various reasons, and the habitat that they're usually found in becoming more fragmented.
These are some of the 100 water voles bred in captivity being reintroduced into the countryside for the first time. In 25 release pens, they're being taken to the banks of Malham Tarn in the Yorkshire Dales, Britain's highest freshwater lake, perfect conditions for their numbers to rise. The water voles will stay in these pens for about 5 days, and then the rangers will open the doors and they'll be free to venture off into the wild.
We've put some rafts out that the water voles will use as latrines, and once they've used those as latrines, it's a really good marker, an indicator that they've spread and made the Malham Tarn area their home.
This little creature has captured the public imagination ever since The Wind in the Willows was published over a century ago. Known as Ratty in the book and best friends with toad and otter, this latest tale from the riverbank should also have a happy ending for the water vole. Angus Walker, News at 10 in the Yorkshire Dales.
And finally, if you ever doubted Usain Bolt's impact on the world of athletics, just consider this. He has recorded 9 of the fastest 100 metre times in history, including the top 3. All the other 21, all of them have been recorded by men who've been found guilty at some point of doping. Bolt says he wants to be as iconic as Pelé and Muhammad Ali. Well, he's probably achieved that kind of status already. But more than that, it might also be true to say he has saved his sport. And in the process, he somehow makes it look incredibly easy. So how does he do it?
He is quite simply the fastest man who's ever lived. Usain Bolt has left everyone in his wake at 3 successive Olympic Games, and he has smashed world record after world record. Tonight he goes for the unprecedented triple treble. So how on earth does he run so fast? It begins, naturally enough, with his start. It's not very good, but critically, it is nowhere near as bad as that of other men of his height. So, as long as he's up and running and not too far behind, he can always win.
His top end speed is so superior to anybody in the 8 and the 7 on the track. If he's in biting distance, he knows his top end speed is going to be superior to anybody else's. So once he's in half decent shape and he can tap into that, the chances are he's going to win.
Bolt has inherited the so-called sprinting gene from his Jamaican ancestors. In short, 90% of his muscle fibres are type 2 fast twitch, which gives him his explosive power. And then there's his diet. Bolt's coach says his childhood love of highly fibrous yams, which contain a substance called phytate, help feed those muscle fibres. But how does being so tall allow him to move his limbs faster? Well, it doesn't per se. He simply completes the race in many fewer strides, 41 on average. His competitors usually need 4 or 5 more. And as to why he's faster than other tall men, well, the scientists have an explanation for that too.
He's got very long, slender limbs. Now, long limbs, you can't move them quite as quickly because, well, by dint of them being longer, they've got higher inertia. But he's a very long and slender, and that's the most important thing. So because he's so slim, he can actually move.
But it isn't all about the science. As his sister told us tonight, he hated to lose.
He would cry, would take it really seriously, he'd cry, and he would train harder. He'd race, go up and down the hill, he'd go around the house, he'd just never keep still, and he'd race every day just to prove that he can beat him.
So there is hard graft as well as physiology, natural talent, or whatever you want to call it. What isn't in doubt is that after years of controversy, and whatever happens tonight, Usain Bolt has probably saved the reputation of his sport.
The phenomenon that is Usain Bolt. And you'll have to stay up till the early hours if you want to see him write potentially the last chapter in his own personal history. Imagine being one of his teammates. Talk about pressure. That's it. I'll be back on Monday. Until then, good night. Thank you very much for watching and have a brilliant weekend.